This is the last book in the Bone series, Bone Crown of Thorns, book 9 out of 9. That is to say, this is the last book in the Bone series proper. There are all sorts of other extra books or companion books, etc. Many of which, I've already reviewed on this channel, and I'll link to the full playlist in the description down below. And some of which I may be requesting from the library and reviewing in the weeks and months to come. Stay tuned. But yes, this is the last book about the original Bone series, the proper Bone epic. And it's the book that concludes with the final showdown between good and evil, and as such, it's, in my opinion, the dullest book in the series. But I don't really blame the book for that so much. It was saddled with what it had to do. If you're going to set up the story in the way that Jeff Smith has set it up, where it's starts off as kind of a Carl Barks-esque cartoon adventure and then gradually turns into a Tolkien-esque epic, then eventually you have to have the conclusion to that Tolkien-esque epic. And that ends up being a rather boring confrontation between good and evil, but this is where the ride was headed all along. So I think there are some good moments in here, but in terms of rereadability, I don't know. This would be low on my list. The other books are all much more charming. But let's just go through it here. We start off with Thorn dreaming, and we see a dream that we've seen a few times before earlier in the epic. This was originally published as individual comic book issues, so earlier in those comic book issues, with a few more panels added here. Now, this is a little bit confusing to me exactly how this fits in. So in addition to Thorn's flashback, we get some characters giving exposition of what happened that night. So here, this is from, what book is this? Book 7. Briar says, "Yes, I led them to your gates, but when your mother realized I was kidnapping you for the ritual, your father cut me in half with an old abandoned farm tool. Only later did I learn that your parents were eaten alive." So, yeah, trying to figure out when that happened. When did Briar get killed? So, looks like Thorn's parents are following Briar. They meet, and this, I guess this is Grandma Ben. "Where is my granddaughter? She is here." So this is mother. Okay, so this is Grandma Ben's daughter, Thorn's mother. And then this is the child who is handed over. Are any of these hooded creatures Briar? I don't think so. So when exactly did they become separated from Thorn? Where did the ambush happen? It all feels to me like this flashback scene doesn't completely mesh with the other backstory as we've been told it. But as always, if I'm missing something, let me know in the comments. And that will go through all of the questions I have throughout this review, because there are a few more things that don't completely make sense to me, but let me know. Anyways, Thorn, in her dream, is told by her mother, "Seek the crown of horns." Sorry, not thorns. Seek the crown of horns. I keep wanting to say thorns. I guess because a crown of thorns is an established thing, like, right, from the Passion narrative, etc. But it's a crown of horns. Anyways. Yeah, so anyways, the crown of horns was established in one of the previous books. I think it might have been book 8. But this is what Thorn's quest is for this book. So it's one of those books where the characters just have to go and find the MacGuffin, and as such is boring. But you can't criticize it too much because the fantasy genre is just filled with those type of plot lines, right? So go and find the MacGuffin is, for better or for worse, maybe for worse, just an established part of fantasy storytelling. So they are all in jail at the beginning. Well, except for Grandma Ben, who's up here on the ramparts. Is negotiating the loyalty with Tarsal's soldiers. Meanwhile, Tarsal is out on the gates confronting Briar. And this is a really chilling scene here, in my opinion. It's something that at least stuck in my memory from when I first read it, when I read the Bone Epic collection. Tarsal says, "You can't teach me anything. I have fought with dragons." So we've known since the previous book, book 8, that Tarsal had fought with the dragons and had gotten wounded terribly. But now we see how disfigured he is, which is why he's always been keeping his face covered in all the previous panels. But here he shows off how he has suffered from his fight with the dragons. And then I find this so creepy, and creepy in a good way, like, well done. Briar just says, "Ha ha ha." Ha! Ha? What is she doing? That's Tarsal's old face. So she takes the form of his old face before he got disfigured by the dragons. Ha ha ha, aren't I handsome? So look at what he has lost because of his battle with the dragon. And this just so discomforts him, or puts him off his guard. No, that's not the right expression. So unnerves him. That's what I'm looking for. That he just stands here as she flies and cuts him down. It does make me raise the question. We've seen her also assume the form of her younger self when she was trying to distract Lucius. Does raise the question of, if she can do this, then why does she keep reverting back to this kind of zombified corpse look? I don't know. Maybe the zombified corpse look is more horrifying, and that's the look she's going for. But then we get, the big battle at the castle walls scene. And there is some good images here. Some good battle scenes with Grandma Ben as just being this invincible fighter who just runs across the walls just single-handedly, a one-man army. Now, to enjoy these scenes, you do have to suspend a little bit of disbelief. And it's been established previously that Grandma Ben is just tough as nails. So I guess this is just in keeping with the character. Why she is so tough, has that been established in the book, or do we just have to take it as a given? I don't know, but yeah, you can see her like almost single-handedly fighting the whole army. It takes a whole army to pin her down. I guess you can love it or hate it, but I find it an interesting image. So they get, meanwhile, the Bones and Thorn get broken out of the jail by the children and go to join the fray, where they hinder it as much as they help it. Then we get, I believe what in this case is a retelling of Mim's story. Mim's going to pop up later. And let's skip to the next time we get something interesting. So Thorn gets the idea to seek out the crown of thorns in the dragon's graveyard. Phony put the idea into her head. So she goes off, and then Fonebone and Bartleby go off after her. Meanwhile, Grandma Ben is staying behind to fight the enemy. So, oh yes, they pass by Rockjaw, who sees them and lets them pass anyways. Or maybe he doesn't see him, maybe his eyes just flash open while he's sleeping. Part of me wants to criticize this for not making sense, but I think it's meant to be ambiguous, right? We, the reader, are meant to be left hanging as to whether Rockjaw chose to let them go for whatever reasons he has. Maybe he's decided to change sides again, or maybe he wants to play both sides off each other. Or whether Rockjaw simply opens his eyes, still half asleep, and then closes them again. It's not completely clear, and I think to be fair, it's not meant to be clear. I don't know. What's your interpretation of this? Is this meant to be ambiguous, or did you have a different interpretation of what was going on there? And then Thorn gets to the army, where she runs and then goes into a flying position. Now, the first time I read this, I thought, oh, okay, so she can fly now. Well, this hasn't been set up at all. But then when I read it again, I realized that it kind of was set up before. Let me flip back here. So when Thorn goes into the ghost circles, she sees the spirits of the people who are trapped there, and they carry her, which results in her flying. And then when she comes out of the ghost circle, she's flying like this. Now, when she's not in the ghost circle, it's not entirely clear to me how she's harnessing this power. But I assume it's connected to her being borne aloft by the spirits in the ghost circle. I don't know. Chalk that up to something that doesn't entirely make sense. I feel like I partially get this, but maybe not fully. So, there's the two rat creatures who have been the main two rat creatures all behind the series are in prison here. And we don't get a lot of humor in this last book, but we do get a little bit. And we take a break for Smiley-Bone baking them some quiche, which one of them loves. But then they have to leave it here because they get called out with the quiche being placed just outside of the rat creature's grasp. It's a funny little scene. But more than that, I think this scene serves a purpose of letting the reader know that the rat creatures that we've been following are safely locked away. So when we keep flipping through the book and we see scenes of the rat creatures getting killed or shot down, which let me find a good picture of that, here or here, or sorry, there are a few ones here. Here's a good one. Yeah, so that rat creature gets killed by the arrows. I think if we, the reader, hadn't been told that the rat creatures that we know are locked away, we'd be wondering, was that the rat creatures we know? Who's getting killed here? But this lets us know that we don't need to worry about these guys. They're being locked away. And whatever happens to the other rat creatures is happening to rat creatures we don't care about. All right, there's a trek through the tunnels here. Thorn meets King Doc. Now, in my previous review, I complained that King Doc was able to form consonants despite having lost his tongue. But here he's able to talk again. So makes me think I was a little bit too pedantic to complain about that in the previous review. Well, I mean, yeah. Either way, I was being pedantic when I complained about it in the previous review. But whatever's going on here, it's apparently not Jeff Smith doesn't know how articulation works. King Doc is getting his powers of speech back through some other means. Maybe he can regenerate his tongue, or I don't know. So he demands that Thorn kill him, which Thorn is reluctant to do until King Doc forces her to. So it leads to rather, I don't want to say gruesome, because this is relatively tame as depictions go. But it's, well, kind of gruesome, huh? Yeah, it's a bit of a downer in terms of tone. But that's the kind of story we're in for here. So there's, oh yes, yes, so Bone says he will touch the crown of horns because he still has the locust inside of him. Which reminds me, this is something I mentioned in my review of one of the previous books, but I said it wasn't entirely clear to me how Bone got one of the pieces of the locust inside of him. And I said I was hoping it would be cleared up in the later books. And it never is. So I guess I'm left with the hypothesis I started with, which is that he accidentally swallowed some of the locusts in book 1 when they got swarmed by the locusts, and he accidentally got some in his mouth. So, yeah, I don't know. Is that what happened? And if so, is it... What do you think? Would the story have benefited from that being made more explicit here? Or the fact that the reader has to go back and piece this together with what had happened all the way back in the first issue, is that making this a little bit more challenging and thereby elevating this as a work of storytelling for the reader? What do you guys think? Okay. And then we get... yeah. Sorry, I'll come back to that. Thorn through Bone touches the crown of horns, which kills Briar. Now, I don't think this is ever explained, right? Why touching the crown of horns is going to kill Briar or defeat the Lord of the Locusts. Other than that, it's just established as one of the rules of this universe. Right? There's no more logic to it than that, huh? There's a weird kind of dream sequence where there's a hello here, and Thorn says, we can't go that way. Why not? Because if we do, we can't come back. So what is this here? Is this something that... anyone know what the sense behind that is? And while I'm talking about things that don't make sense, let me repeat something I've mentioned in my reviews of earlier books. I'm not entirely sure how the Lord of the Locusts got freed. I thought that Briar had botched the sacrifice ritual by mistaking Phony Bone for one of the beings of power when he wasn't. But somehow, even though she made that mistake, the ritual still freed the Lord of the Locusts. But then, here, the locust is dead. Okay, the locust is dead. But then Mim, the dragon who had been possessed by the Lord of the Locusts, is free, and she's attacking. But if the locust is dead, then she should no longer be possessed, right? So that means, why is Mim still a threat here? Wouldn't Mim go back to being her normal self if she's not being possessed? Anyways, the red dragon shows up to rescue Foambone and Thorn. It says, "Hurry! The other dragons are blind with rage. They'll rip us apart if they catch us." So, I guess the other dragons are blind with rage because they're in their sacred burial ground. This is another thing that doesn't really make sense to me. Now, to be fair, it's established very clearly that the rules of this land are that the dragons don't allow anyone else in their sacred burial ground, and if anyone else comes in, the dragons get very upset. But I don't understand why the dragons would be blind with rage about this, because everything we've seen about the dragons has led us to believe that they're benevolent, kind, wise, thoughtful. I could have gone along with this maybe if the dragons felt they had to enforce their rules. Sort of like, well, look, Thorn, we know that you were touching the crown of thorns to defeat the Lord of the Locusts and save the world. But we still feel like we have to kill you anyways because those are the rules of our land and we need to be consistent when we enforce our rules. So I'm sorry, Thorn, we have to kill you. Like something legalistic like that I could have gone along with. But the dragons just being driven into a mad fury by rage, even though I don't understand how the dragons lose their sense of reasoning here. But here comes the dragons. They're all mad with rage. I don't know. Are these dragons qualitatively different than the other dragons we've met so far? Meaning the red dragon. And also, and there was one more we met in Tall Tales, who was Stillman. And the story about the Stillman dragon was published before this final issue was published originally. His name was Stillman, right? Yeah, Stillman was his name. So, anyways. Then Mim comes out, and I've already stated how I don't understand about Mim. Then all the other dragons engulf Mim, and then Mim jumps underground. So, what's going on here? Are the dragons sacrificing themselves? Excuse me. Are the dragons sacrificing themselves to take down Mim? Was this their plan all along? Did they just happen to boom out of the ground and then by coincidence meet Mim? Because they were underground chasing the red dragon and Foambone and Thorn. And then they boomed out and they attacked Mim. And there's a great hero moment, by the way, with the red dragon. So the red dragon is rushing. He's on his back as Foambone and Thorn. He's saving them. Ted says, "How you doing, boys? Grandma's up Sinner's Rock. Could use some help. On it." And then the dragon just comes in, rushes, doesn't even stop to catch his breath, and just saves the day. But I did think, kind of when I was reading this, you know, we've been shown throughout this whole series that this dragon is like, he's kind of like Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia. He's this benevolent protector who's always there when you need him, almost always there when you need him. Saves the day, but what makes him tick? What is his motivation for helping the humans? Might be interesting to get some more information about him. in addition to all the questions I have about what the rest of the dragons are doing. Okay, but that is the end of the action. And then we have just a lot of wrap-up here. Now, to be fair, it's readable, and we get some humor interjected here, which helps make it go a long way. And we also get interjected here the solstice, which, according to Wikipedia, this was published as like a bonus issue on one of the promotional things for the Bone comic back when the Bone was still being serialized as comic book issues. And it's printed here. And I was expecting when I first read about this on Wikipedia for this to not really fit into continuity neatly. But it does fit into continuity neatly. We're established as winter in the valley again. And then we get a very short, just, 4 pages long, comic about solstice, which obviously is their stand-in for Christmas. And then, finally, so it's spring. They head out. Phony Bone has this plan to sneak out with the treasury of the kingdom. But we find out right at the end that Grandma Ben was onto him and refilled his treasure chests with stuffed bread thingies. And then we've got a brilliant little last scene here where he says, "Sai, I don't even like hard stuffed bread thingies. Better learn to like them. They're the only food on board. Fine, hand me one. Give me a gold coin first." "What?" "Oh, give him a gold coin, Phony. We're out in the middle of the desert." Which is an echo from the very first pages of the beginning of the story. And here we have the end. So, I've got some questions. There's some things that don't make any sense to me, or things that I feel like I only partially understand. But all in all, a good conclusion to this epic, even though it's more epic and less fun than the earlier books. But like I said at the beginning, I understand that that's the ride we're on here, so I can go along with that. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. That's the end of Book 9 of the Bone series. I've now reviewed all of these books on this channel. And stay tuned. I do plan on getting a few more of the Bone supplemental books read and reviewed before I finally say goodbye to this series.